Welcome to the ANOKHI Uncensored Show, guys. I'm your host, Raj Girn, and I'm thrilled to be chatting with Canadian director and producer Michelle Mama about her incredible contribution to advocacy for the LGBTQIA plus community. Michelle is an internationally renowned television and film director and producer, and noted for her critically acclaimed television series, Shine True, which was nominated for the Critics' Choice Real TV Awards in 2021. Shine True is a documentary series celebrating the trans and gender non-conforming community by helping them overcome dysphoria and getting them to a place where they can freely and finally present the way they feel. Currently, Michelle is the executive producer for Canada's Drag Race and is a proud member of the LGBTQIA plus community. It's because of her advocacy to center voices from her community that she has made the ANOKHI Advocate List 2021 in commemoration for the 19th anniversary of ANOKHI Life service to the global South Asian community. You are such a rock star, Michelle. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show and give us your insights, as well as congratulations for making the list this year.
Thank you so much. I'm honored, truly honored. What a list and what great company. Thank you so much.
You're absolutely welcome, sweetheart. Well, I want to start by just asking you a very simple question. What does advocacy mean to you?
Advocacy is standing up for, and I think before I was an LGBTQIA plus, it keeps changing, advocate, I had to wrestle with myself and, who I am and really make it come to terms with the fact that I'm a part of that community. And I think a big part, the largest part of making that process simple for me was the support I had of my family, honestly. And I feel very fortunate as a Parsi. My family is from Pakistan and India. We're Parsis, we're Zoroastrians. But, we come from a very old, ancient tradition. And, my parents are immigrants to Canada. And I think that, I spent 10 years of my life truly believing that if I told my mother, that I was queer, or my father, that I would kill them, that they would have a heart attack, and that die on the spot. And that was truly, as smart as I am, a real belief that I had. And it's a credit to them that they took their time. Of course, there's all kinds of cultural, wrapping their head around things and disappointment. But because I had the support of them, it gave me a strong foundation to then be a strong advocate for others, because I know that not everybody is that lucky.
Right.
A really important part of the work that I do to try and help, especially where the intersection of queerness and people of color happens, help like that move through what is a really difficult process for some in whatever way I can.
Absolutely. It's layers upon layers when you kind of look at that intersection, and I feel so blessed and honored that you are coming, on the show to just kind of really help those people that are still stuck at that intersection and keep revolving back. It's like cyclical. We keep coming back to kind of those areas in our lives where we feel that we've had the hardest journeys. So I want to ask you this. I kind of feel that you've answered this, but I want you to encapsulate it. Why is advocacy so important to you?
Because community is so important to me. And because I know that, sometimes your birth family is not going to give you what you need. And I think as South Asians, as people from the diaspora, it's so ingrained in us that our birth family is everything and everything is family. But sometimes the family that sort of converges around you when you're a queer person, your queer family, or you're sometimes referred to as your chosen family, those are the people who really buoy you up and save you in times of what is emotional and mental crisis, actually, which is what a coming out process is. It's a crisis. And, I have friends who I consider as close as blood relatives, people I've known for 25 years, people who knew me before, during, and after that process. And those people to me I would take a bullet for them. They're my family, just like my blood family. And I think some people, I have an example of a young a young fellow who I mentored from a Syrian family. When they found out he was queer, they, beat the stuffing out of him.
Mm-hmm.
He had to escape from his family's house in Mississauga with no shoes on in the middle of winter and go to a shelter. And they haven't spoken to him since. I mean, look at the difference. I mean, I've been so fortunate, and I think so now that person, knows that he's got me, and he's got this whole family of queer South Asians, and just queers, just South Asians, people who love and respect him. And that is the most important thing, just to know that you're not alone, just to know that there's a community. And any time that I get a message on Facebook or Instagram, and the most incredible thing is my mother gets these messages now from mothers of kids who are struggling or trying, they seem to be wanting to come out, and they say, "Oh, Nilofer, what should I do?" And my mother's become, an advocate herself.
I love that.
This process, and she helps these moms through what she went through. And it takes a village to advance and evolve.
Absolutely. You're sharing this and I'm smiling because, this is what we hope for, right? This is what we hope we can accomplish, to be able to just make it that much easier for the next generation, to make it that much easier, for not just the next generation. I want to kind of correct myself there, but just also for the generations that already are.
Yes.
You shared this beautiful story about, yourself and your mother. And I really hope that people who are watching, listening, and reading this everywhere.
I can give you her email and you can get in touch and
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Can you, I feel that you've shared a bit of your personal advocacy philosophy, but can you encapsulate it for us here?
I think it's very simple. We just have to take care of and look after each other. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And in the professional world, which is what I do a lot of mentoring for queer, non-binary South Asian youth, is to send the elevator back down. Success means nothing if you can't pull other people up with you. So
right.
Whatever challenges people are facing, being able to guide and be some sort of anchor in whatever way I can. I think ultimately what it comes down to is service. And I've learned that from my community, from the Parsi community, from my family. It's all about giving back and being in service to others, really.
Absolutely. And it's a big part of, your particular subsect's culture as well, is the give back piece, right? How does what you believe in translate over into your professional journey? Because obviously there's a massive kind of component of what you do truly is everything you just finished talking about.
Yeah, I'll tell you, in the last series, the one that we're talking about, Shine True, which is basically a makeover show, but almost a Trojan horse, because it's actually a documentary series about transformation and change. And what we did was we had, trans and non-binary youth who know who they are, but they haven't been socialized female or male. They've been socialized in the opposite way. And they don't know how to dress or put on makeup, or in the opposite case, they don't know, how to, once they've had a top surgery, how to dress like a man, how to buy a suit. And so essentially it was about helping people present who they really are finally for the first time.
Wow.
We had 2 trans hosts. And when putting the team together, it was a small, cheap and cheerful affair. There wasn't a lot of us. I was driving the van. It was a very small show, a very underfunded show, but we managed to pull off miracles. And it was really, really important to me that when we were with these subjects, who, by the way, we cast an entirely all POC cast. So every one of the 8 subjects that we profiled was a person of color. And every single one of my crew was a queer person. And so I think that the reason we were able to achieve the kind of intimacy and trust that we were in the short period of time that we had with the budget that we had, 3 days or whatever, is because there's not that sense of otherness when you're surrounded by other queer people. There's a shorthand. We've all been through our own coming out process. We've all been through our own traumas and stress, and we've all had our family stuff. And so there's already an intimacy inherent. and then having as many, people of color too on the crew, wherever it was possible. So people are surrounded with sameness and can feel safe. And I think, this industry is changing fast, but it's still full of really sweet, lovely guys called Mike and Dave with baseball caps, who, have cottages and 2.5 kids, and they're lovely guys. I've worked with them for 20 years, but that's not the person I want to put in front of a very vulnerable, trans, person of color whose parents won't accept them. I mean, there's all kinds of layers about seeing and being seen when you're capturing someone's story. It can feel exploitative if it's not done correctly. And it was really, really important every step of the way to make sure people were comfortable, to stop if they weren't, and to really sort of impress upon them that this is about your growth and journey. It's not about gotcha TV where we're trying to like make you cry or capture your pain. It's about capturing the joy and inspiring other kids who are watching to be brave.
Absolutely. Michelle, can you share why you feel that, people should incorporate some sort of a sense of advocacy into their lives? I mean, with some people, it's a personal journey. Others, it's a professional journey. Yet others still, it's a spiritual journey. And then all of the above in some sort of cocktail. Like, can you share that?
I think it's an all of the above thing for me. And I think part of that is because I chose not to have kids. And so, I think that it's really, it takes, parents can't do it all. And, I choose to be the sort of the cool aunt or friend of a friend or whatever that you can sort of tell things you can't tell your parents. That's completely open, that, you feel safe with. And I think that those aunties, the auntie role is a very important role, especially in South Asian culture. And, if I can be the cool brown auntie that people call because they know that I'm queer and they're scared to tell their mom, my job here is done. I think just being accessible, open, public about being a queer person myself, people are already magnetized to you because they feel like, oh gosh, here's someone I can talk to. So, I mean, as long as I'm being public and open and giving of myself as much as possible and making people understand that they're safe with me, then that's the best I can do.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about how important advocacy has been in this last year, especially. What have you seen that has stood out in, what's happening in our world today that you feel is changing to meet people where they're at, rather than the generations, the hundreds upon hundreds of years of conditioning that we have, been pushed into these boxes of these preconceived ideologies that, one size fits all. Like, what are your thoughts about what you've seen happening that stood out for you this past year in that regard specifically?
I mean, when you say this past year, unfortunately, my head just goes to COVID, especially right now. And when you think about accessibility, people who maybe English isn't their first language, and they're navigating all these Byzantine, bizarre ways to try to find a vaccine or a booster. I can't tell you how many times someone's called me, someone's uncle in Markham is looking for this or that. Can you help? I mean, accessibility is so important. And when people are designing these systems, the Shoppers Drug Mart antigen test systems or the whatever, they've got to be accessible to people who are, first generation Canadian or recently immigrated, whose English isn't the first language. Stuff like that is what I think with accessibility in the last year. I really do think people, people of color, people who don't have $40 to get a COVID test at Shoppers Drug Mart, people who don't have the internet to order tests, and then when they do, they don't have $150 to spend on a kit. I mean, there's socioeconomic challenges, there's challenges with access and language. There's so many things, that come to mind where all of us are in our little bubbles and scared and stressed, but then to really never lose sight of the fact that there's people in tents, and then there's people who just arrived from Afghanistan and don't have a computer to go on and book an appointment. So always keeping those people in mind when we're really self-involved and taking care of ourselves during a pandemic, trying to really remember that and trying to do whatever you can, donate, rapid tests, try to help people book appointments, aunties, grannies, all that stuff, just trying to take care of people as much as possible and use whatever skills you have to help people who don't have those skills.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that because, the cousin to advocacy is is considered slacktivism. So, that's the whole kind of notion of creating and sharing a hashtag that gives a person this idea that they are contributing to some cause by sharing the hashtag. So, I got to ask you this, like, what do you feel are the pros and cons of slacktivism?
Look, it's good to have a constant reminder of things, but essentially if it's just going to be a token or it's just going to be a hashtag, it's not going to do anything. All it is performative. It's you saying, I'm a good person, everyone, look, I'm sharing this box, I'm sharing this hashtag, whatever. But actually, what are you doing? It's really all about you. And that's the problem with social media, is it's all about image profile. It's all about sort of like you telegraphing to the people on the other side, I'm this kind of person, I'm left wing, I'm an advocate, I'm an activist. And like you said, slacktivism, putting a hashtag on your Instagram is not activism. You have to get out there and you have to sort of do the work. And whatever that means, for me it means mentoring young kids coming up in this industry and trying to make sure that they get the breaks that they deserve. Making sure that when I'm working on a queer show, which the last two have been, and then the one I did before that in the making also had a lot of queer subjects, that were really sensitive to that stuff, that we're not going out into the field with a bunch of like straight white people to shoot queer content. It doesn't make sense. We have to be aligning the storytellers with the story. So it's stuff like that. I mean, for me, slacktivism, it's going to happen. It's the world that we live in. Everyone is performing. I'm less impressed with a hashtag, and I'm more impressed with, a photo of you giving up, food at a food bank, or, at a protest, or, doing the work. And you know what? Sometimes you don't have time to post because you're busy doing the work, and that's great too. And that's the real, that's the real work. The people who are really working probably aren't posting.
Right. I'm so on your page when you say that. It's kind of, it's bringing another thought to my mind that I want to kind of share with you a little bit, Michelle. You have chosen specifically media as your form to put out your advocacy. Can you share why?
I mean, I got, I've been in this business, film and television business, for 25 years. And when I started off, I was just a person making television. I was a kid. I started off driving people and getting people sandwiches and coffee. And I worked my way up brick by brick, production assistant, production coordinator, production manager, like over all these years. And now I'm a producer, director, executive producer. And I think, what I've learned is, it's been in the last couple of years, I've been referred to as a person of color or as an LGBTQ advocate. And it's interesting because it's just what I've been doing naturally. And I think you have to, when you are doing advocacy work, it's got to be something that's personal to you, and it's got to feel organic. It's got to be part of what you do. It's got to be a practice. It can't just be a one-off. Every show that I go on, I make sure that there's some kind of mentorship piece, that there's some kind of way for me to bring in new talent, fresh talent, if they're not trained, to help mentor and train them and get them where they need to go. I wish someone had done it for me. They didn't. I wish, and in my day, there was no sort of advantage to being South Asian or POC. You just had to elbow and hustle the way everyone else did.
Absolutely.
Now that we've got this crack of the door open, and there's, people are actively seeking, people of color, queer people, diversity in all ways. It's almost, it's a gold rush kind of, you want the best talent, everyone's phone is ringing. And I think it's just really, really important that people, when they get those calls, and when they, that they don't get overwhelmed, and that they are ready for the challenge when it arises. It's that opportunity and readiness juncture. I just want people to be ready when the calls come in, and help in any way you can.
Absolutely. And this is the time, right, Michelle? It seems like every iteration of identity is starting to, get some semblance of
it's funny. I was
light.
always a producer, and now I'm a BIPOC producer, so my phone's ringing more, and it's like,
I love it.
Okay, sure, but what am I going to do with that advantage? What am I going to do with that privilege, with the timing? This sort of like I'm in a very advantageous position, because I've done my career and I've reached a certain point, and now there's an advantage to my identities. Okay, so now how am I going to use that? And how am I going to leverage it for other people and make other people be able to pull other people up? There's some incredible organizations, BIPOC Film and Television. There's so many where people are sort of gathering and saying, okay, how can we help each other out? And how can we, and in terms of queerness, it's very, very difficult for some people to be both South Asian or, diaspora and queer. It's very hard, because we have been conditioned, we have been raised a certain way. We come from ancient cultures with thousands and thousands of years of doctrine. And so, I was born in Canada, I was raised here, and, that's, working within those two identities, the ancient and the modern, the old world and the new world, the cultural whiplash, essentially. It's so important that we take our time, we're gentle and kind to ourselves, that there's no shame around our journey, because everybody's family and everybody's experience is different, and sometimes your blood family will disappoint you,
right?
And that's okay, because you'll find family in other ways. But I think it's really especially hard for South Asians, because we're so family centric. Also, I think it's really hard for South Asian folks to understand queerness. They have a template for maybe what is a gay man, because they've seen hijras, or because they understand from popular media, what a gay man is, and they have some stereotype of what a gay man is, feminine and swishy or whatever. But it was hardest for my mom to understand about me was, but you don't look gay, you don't seem gay, and so I'm doing all those stereotypes about what is gay. It's not, a woman with a buzzed head and combat boots necessarily, although I have had combat boots, but and a gay man is not necessarily going to look like a hijra. It's like, there's just the whole spectrum, and trying to sort of bring our community closer to understanding that it's a spectrum, that you can't judge a book by its cover, and that, we as people who, struggle to be respected and treated well in this world, and oftentimes should be the last people to persecute other people for who they are and speaking their truth. That just seems like
it seems like common sense, but
common sense. Yeah,
there's a lot of other things that kind of factor into that. And
there's a lot of toxic masculinity. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of not understanding. And I think a lot of it too has to do with education, and it has to do with exposure. Like, of course you think a trans person is not whatever, you've got no frame of reference, but then you meet one and you're like, oh, okay. And that's what I try to do is, if no one knows a gay person or a lesbian or a queer person, and then they meet me, and they're like, oh, even just being yourself and being out about it makes a difference. I know it's made a difference for my family's friends, for the extended friends, to understand and know that I am out and proud, that I'm queer. And it's sort of just that in itself is an advocacy for the people who come next. To sort of say, we're here, I'm here, it's okay. I'm alive. Things are fine. Me and my mom are talking. Everything's good. My girlfriend came for Christmas. It's all good. It's kind of like you're like in a living embodiment of an It Gets Better campaign. And sometimes for communities like ours, that's what you need to do, is just be, just be and be available to anybody who needs you.
Absolutely. There's people that are sitting at that, intersection that you talked about earlier. What would you say to them?
I would say that you've got a more interesting path and journey than other people do. It's going to make you a much more interesting person, and it's a much more challenging journey, but it's totally worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually, you know, kind of envious really of the Gen Zs and the kids coming up now, because the world, you know, has advanced so much that you know, the conversation around queerness. I mean, marriage is legal in the US. Who would have thought that 20 years ago, you know?
Right.
Gay marriage. So, you know, I think it's just sort of reminding people that the thing that is, you know, the monkey on your back, that big scary thing about coming out or whatever, the world is much more hospitable to you. And my real message to people is, sometimes we underestimate our families. Sometimes we underestimate how sophisticated our families are, and how maybe they already know things that you don't think they know. And maybe, you know, ultimately what they love you, and that's the most important thing. And with the caveat that if that's not the case, there will be a community here, like a safety net. The queer community is, you know, love all comers, and we take care of everybody within our fold. So, you know, it's not easy, but nothing rewarding is. And it's much more important that you're living your truth than hiding it, especially in, you know, 2022.
When there are so many resources and so many options, so many support systems. Yeah, absolutely.
No one's saying it's easy. It's hard. It's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But the rewards on the other side of that are immense.
Absolutely. You know, can you believe that we've come to the end of our conversation? I literally am getting ready to close off, and, you know, it begs wanting to speak to you in a much more deeper manner, you know, on another occasion, Michelle. I really do hope that I get the opportunity to do that with you. There's so many questions I have for you and so many insights. So let's definitely do that. But before I let you go, I want to ask you this. With all that you've seen and experienced, what advice would you give to everyone watching, listening, and reading this who want to be more proactive in a cause that they believe in, but they just actually don't know how to get up and action it? Like, what would you say to them?
What I would say is actually the trick or the key or the secret of activism and advocacy is you get more from it than you put in. There is a feedback loop when you do something for others that feels really good and continues. It's like exercise. It's like a muscle. Just do the first thing. Just put one foot in front of the other. Just do one thing, a little thing, an attainable thing, and not a hashtag. You know, see what you can do. See what you can do. Look around you. I think all of us are busy, you know, looking at our phones. Look outside of yourself. Pay attention, put your antenna up, see if there's, you know, somebody in your life who might be struggling. It could just be a one-on-one thing. That's advocacy too. You know, over the holidays, if you overhear a conversation about someone's niece or nephew may or may not be gay, and there's all kinds of consternation, jump in, make it easier. Tell people, make it easier. Because as we all know with South Asians, it's so much about what are other people going to think? What are other people going to think? It doesn't matter what other people think. And it's such a hard thing to undo for us. And I think that's always the hardest thing with the parents. They're going to love you no matter what. I mean, with obviously some exceptions, it's more like, Are, what is everybody going to think? And it's like, okay, well, so let's interrogate that for a second. What difference does it make? You know, we come from these tribal communities. We come from these close-knit communities where everybody's watching everybody else. Maybe it's what's much more important for mental health, physical health, and just happiness is to not worry so much about what other people think and just worry about your truth and just do that. And I think, you know, activism and advocacy can be on a very, very small scale. Just looking after one person, reaching out to one person, telling them, hey, I support you no matter what. I mean, I had an uncle call me after my mom had told him, and he was, you know, he called me. I remember I was sitting in my car, I remember exactly where I was. And he just, hey, listen, Mish, I just want to tell you, I love you no matter what. I love you. And I don't care who you love. And you're a number top in my books and whatever. And just getting that call, like, it seems like nothing. You make a phone call, but it changes somebody's day and life. And like 15 years later, I can still remember it. So just little things, let people know that they're loved, let people know that they're supported. We have a mental health crisis right now, especially with COVID and everything else. And queer people, people of color are being affected on much higher levels of like, self-harm and suicidal ideation and just depression and all kinds of stuff. And the littlest gesture towards somebody who's struggling makes so much difference. It really does.
Amen to that. I really, really hope that whatever your journey is, Michelle, that you just continue just living in your truth, because, it's very inspirational for those people out there who generally tend to just kind of watch and listen and not action. Hopefully, listening to this, reading it, watching it wherever they are in the world, that something just kind of sparks a thought to them that maybe my contribution is going to be something that's going to change someone's life. And that's all we all need to do in our lives, in these human incarnations that we're in,
Absolutely. And it's just important, here I am, I'm a queer woman, I'm normal, I don't have horns, I don't have, scales, just a person who loves women, and that's it. And there's lots of us, and let's just demystify all of this. And we're such a smart, educated, sophisticated people globally. It would be a shame for this one thing, this cultural thing, to hold us back. I think that once we get over this hump, hopefully in the next 20 years, and really can accept, there's going to be people who never accept it, people, much older people and people who are very close-minded. But those of us who are in the diaspora, those of us who are not, not sitting in villages in India and places where it's really, really hard, like, I think it's just really important to push the needle as much as you can, wherever you can, whenever you can.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this honor. I'm truly, truly honored. Thank you so much, ANOKHI, and thank you.